This is Art 154, Week 3, Introduction in order to how to make a balloon model. So what we're going to start with is just a basic follow-up from last week. I'm just going to show you a simple box and explain a couple ideas with it. Turn the grid off real quick. Okay, so I'm going to take this box and I'm going to duplicate it. So, copy. And in the first one, the second one, I will add some subdivisions. So I'll increase the segments. You can actually see them. Now you notice you're not seeing them down in the perspective view, and that's because the default setting has edge faces off, so you might need to turn it on, and then you can increase and decrease and adjust as needed to see everything. So I just want to do a real quick basic to show you a couple of concepts. I'm going to maximize this viewport, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do edit poly modifier. And almost everything we're going to do in this demo is going to be edit poly modifier. I'm going to grab edge, and I'm going to select one of the edges, and I'm going to do Control A and select all the edges for this object. And then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to go to chamfer, and I'm going to open the little dialog box to the right of it. And what it'll do, it's a little hard to see, but let me adjust it so you can see, is it will basically round off the edges, and this is the difference between making something look real and something fake. Now you don't want to do it too much, and it becomes obvious. When you go really far, you start to get some weird messy stuff like that. But you want to add a little bit, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to get this highlight that's on the edges, and that's what makes everything look soft. So you can adjust it relative. You don't want to try to do it en masse unless you have a bunch of items that are the exactly the same size. And then when you're done, you just hit OK. Now if I render this out real quick, just so you can see it, you can see that this has a nice kind of smooth around, and this has a sharp edge. So this is what makes a 3D model look more realistic as opposed to fake. Now the problem with this other object, let me get out of edit mode. If I select this object, and I go to do edit poly, and do the same thing, and I go to grab the edges and do Control A to select everything, and then I come in and I go to do chamfer, I get a problem because you can see all of a sudden I get all this extra geometry. So if you have segments, this doesn't work. So what you need to do is we need to look at a slightly different approach. Let me rotate around. What we need to do is unselect the items that are part of the segment like that, and you go around and do the whole thing. Now if I do change parameters, now it works. So you just have to basically select the edges. It might take you a little bit of time if you have a complicated shape, but then you'll get the same result. So once again, they look similar, and you can get the idea first. Okay, so that's enough for the first concept. So I'm going to reset my scene. Let's do reset. Offset changes, and this reset. And this is going to set everything back to the basic default. So I'm going to create a box, and what we're going to do is we're going to systematically make this box into a room. So go create primitive box, and draw the box on the top, and front, and I'll go through it. Okay, so as far as the box shape, I'll probably make it a little kind of close to a box from the top. And this should be okay. Make it a little. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I want to figure out how to make this actually into its own little separate it into a bunch of rows. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to have a poly modifier, and I will go into face select mode, polygon mode, and I'll select the very top face. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll all the ways down and choose the little box to the right that's attached. Okay, and now you'll notice it's not selected anymore. And that's because it actually is its own object now. So I took that piece of geometry, if I click, you can see now this is the ceiling object. If I pull up, it goes up and down. And you can see what's going on. So what I'll do is, now that I have that, let's go and if I pull this up, okay, yeah, we'll go through the next. So we'll go back and we'll continue selecting this. So I'll select the one here, and I'll go down to attach again. I'll attach this, and I'll call this front wall. And I'll come over here and I'll attach that, and I'll call it the left wall. And I'll move it down, and there's this side, and there's that. Then finally I'll come back and attach. Okay, now at this point the only thing I have left is the bottom, and we're going to leave that alone because we're going to remain with floor. And get out of all the other things. So at this point I'm just going to change some of the color real quick. This white, so this is white. So you can kind of see where each of these exist. So these aren't related to anything. I'm just kind of using these for reference purposes. So it's easier to tell which surface is which. And actually, I'm going to just look that. Okay. At this point, we want to make it a room, because if I render it, you'll notice that I'm on the outside, and I want to be able to go over the inside. So what I'll do is I need to flip these items. So let me show you how to do this basically. I'll go and I'll select the item, and I'm going to hit the flip button, which is right here. Now when I flip this, you see it's a little darker, but at this point, if you look at it, it doesn't make any difference. However, if I go to render it, it does look different. It's basically disappeared, and that's because each plane only has one face that's visible, and the other side's invisible. So what I need to do is I need to go through and flip all of these faces in order to get this to work properly in the proper setup. And in order for me to see what's happening, I have to enable what's called backface calling, which is a fancy word for basically saying if the wrong side is visible. By default, 3D Max shows everything as double-sided, which is actually a little misleading. So I'm going to select all the items and polygons I have in my scene through Object Properties. Backface call, hit OK, and now I actually have an accurate view of the way that this is set up. So now I'll go through and I'll start to do this with the other ones. So I'll select that face, undo down, and flip, and get out of the for that one. It's a little bit bigger than it could be here. Like that. Flip. Now at this point, we don't see anything until I finally come over here and see what's going on. So this one, and we'll flip there, around, grab this one, select it, flip. Now the only one I'm left with at this point that I have to do is the floor. So I'll select the floor, flip that, and do a flip. And now I have that basic part of the room all set up. So that's pretty easy to do once you've figured it out. You want to make sure the backface calling's on. If you don't do that, you're just going to run into a lot of problems. So now let's set this up for what I call a set, so we can actually do some work in it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the save frame, which shows me where the edges are for our render. And I'm going to zoom in and try to get the view as close as I can to what I actually would think inside the room is. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically render out from one view. The only thing you need is you have to have one room and a door with the item. What I want to show you is how you can actually save this view. So I'm going to go with Create and so that my viewport set up camera and do Create Camera from View. There's no difference, but now you see that this says Camera 001, and that's because I've just created a camera. I'm going to change the lens to a 35mm lens. You can see it zooms out, and now we can actually see some of the floor if we don't want. So if I render this out, it looks a little sloppy. Now you're not seeing the ceiling. The ceiling is actually there and it's set up properly. The problem with the ceiling is that it's not being lit when it's actually being rendered because we're using default light. We'll fix that in So you want to hit dolly, and you can use that to select to move in. And then also, if you want, you can also use the camera to move the camera around the other side as well. Now, if I come back and I look at all the viewports, you can see here's my camera. For the most part, you don't need your camera at all. So I'm just going to right-click and do basically the two things you can do. I'm just basically going to do a hide selection, and now the camera's hid, and I don't have to worry about it. And also, I can right-click and go back to perspective, and now I can move this view around. If at any time I want to go back to the original, the camera So, and you can try to do moving with the camera, but usually it's locked off, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. So try to avoid that if you can. So at this point, I want to turn off and basically lock all the walls and all the surfaces because I don't want to be able to do anything with them. Now if I right click, I've got all the walls selected, and I do free selection, everything turns gray. Now if for some reason you want to see color, let's undo that and do object properties. And right here you'll see there's a default that anything you select show frozen in gray. So if for some reason you want to maintain colors, you can toggle that off, hit OK. And now when I right click and I go free selection, everything's frozen, but it hasn't changed the colors. So now I have a workspace inside the room, but I can't select everything, which is basically kind of the goal of what we want to look at and look for. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some molding. Create, I'm just going to do a box, and let's draw out a little bit of molding for the side, and then let's give it a height, and get it in position. Let's make it a little bit longer. Let's move it down to the 4. Okay, and make it a little bit longer. And that's good enough. If it overlaps a little, it's not a big deal. Now, what I'm going to do, two things just to make my life easier. If I right click, I can go isolate selection. Now the only thing that I see is the molding and nothing else. So this is a nice way to edit. If I want to 0.01, I'm going to add an edit poly modifier to it. And before I do that, I want to increase the segments. So let's make sure. Okay, I don't have the preview on again. Realistic. There we go. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to add. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, I want to add a series of basically segments in that direction. Now I'll add the edit poly modifier, and I'll go into vertex selection mode, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to grab and just move around to kind of create the illusion of some type of molding shape. I'm going to get some indents and just move some of this up and down. And if I zoom in and you look at it pretty closely and I go to render it out, now we start to get some of this moving profile. By default, there's a snapping on with this, so we're going to basically, or smoothing, which is something we'll look at later, but if you want this to look harsher, what you would do is select the whole object, and then you can scroll all the way down the bottom, and then you'll see that you can do clear all, and that turns off what's the smoothing, and now you get the hard edges, and it looks a little cleaner. We'll look at that more in a couple weeks, but just want to show you just in case you have any questions about how to do that. So now I'll exit the, I don't know how, I just disabled that front. And disable view, there we go, D. Okay, so now I have my piece of molding. And if I want to know whether or not it's the right size, etc., I want to use some reference footage. This is a little bit big. If you look, this total height goes into this whole height about 6 times, which probably would never happen with molding, but just for demo purposes, it's fine. Now I'm going to hold down the Shift key and copy up, and hit OK. And now I have my crown molding. And if I want, I can adjust that So let's see, let's go back and look at the crown molding. And that shape is a little